Okay, hi everyone, welcome back to this video series on Windows Server 2012, implementing an audit policy. One of the important aspects of controlling security in networked environments is ensuring that only authorized users are able to access specific resources. Although system administrators often spend much time managing security permissions, it is almost always possible for a security problem to occur. Sometimes the best way to find possible security breaches is to actually record the actions that specific users take. Then in the case of a security breach, the unauthorized shutdown of a server, for example, system administrators can examine a log to find the cause of the problem. Windows Server 2012 R2 operating system and Active Directory offer you the ability to audit a wide range of actions. In the following sections, you will see how to implement auditing for Active Directory. Overview of auditing. The act of auditing relates to recording specific actions. From a security standpoint, auditing is used to detect any possible misuse of network resources. Although auditing does not necessarily prevent resources from being misused, it does help determine when violations have occurred or were attempted. Furthermore, just the fact that others know that you have implemented auditing may prevent them from attempting to circumvent security. You need to complete several steps in order to implement auditing in Windows Server 2012 R2. 1. Configure the size and storage settings for the audit logs. 2. Enable categories of events to audit. 3. Specify which objects and actions should be recorded in the audit log. Implementing auditing. Auditing is not an all or none type of process, as in the case with security in general. System administrators must choose specifically which objects and actions they want to audit. The main categories for auditing include audit account logon events, audit account management, audit directory, service access, audit logon events, audit object access, audit policy change, audit privilege use, audit process tracking, audit system events. In this list of categories, 4 of the categories are related to Active Directory. Let's discuss these auditing categories in a bit more detail. Audit account logon events. You enable this auditing event if you want to audit when a user authenticates with a domain controller and logs onto the domain. This event is logged in the security log on the domain controller. Audit account management. This auditing event is used when you want to watch what changes are being made to Active Directory accounts. For example, when another administrator creates or deletes a user account, it would be an audited event. Active Directory service access. This auditing event occurs whenever a user or administrator accesses Active Directory objects. Let's say that an administrator opens Active Directory and clicks a user account. Even if nothing is changed on that account, an event is logged. Audit logon events. Account logon events are created for domain account activity. For example, you have a user who logs onto a server so that they can access files. The act of logging onto the server creates this audit event. Audit object. Access allows you to audit objects within your network, such as folders, files, and printers. If you suspect someone is trying to hack into an object, for example, the finance folder, this is a type of auditing that you would use. You would still need to enable auditing on the actual object. Audit policy. Change allows you to audit changes to user rights, assignment policies, audit policies, or trust policies. This auditing allows you to see whether any changes, any of the other audit policies. Audit privilege use setting to audit privilege use allows administrator to audit each instance of a user exercising a user right. For example, if a user changes the system time on a machine, this is a user right. Logging on locally is another common user right. To audit access to audit access to objects stored within Active Directory, you must enable the Audit Directory Services Access option. Then you must specify which objects and actions should be tracked. Exercise 7.2 walks through the steps you must take to implement auditing of Active Directory objects on domain controllers. Exercise 7.2, enable auditing of Active Directory objects. 1. Open the local security policy tool located in the administrative tools program group. 2, expand local policies, audit policy. 3, double click the setting for audit directory service access. 4, in the audit directory service access properties dialog box, place check marks next to success and failure. Click OK to save the settings. 5, close the local security policy tool using the Auditpol.exe command. There may be a time when you need to look at your actual auditing policy set on a user or a system. This is where an administrator can use the Auditpol.exe command. Auditpol allows system administrators the ability not only to view an audit policy, but also to set, configure, modify, restore, and even remove an audit policy. Auditpol is a command line utility, and there are multiple switches that can be used with Auditpol. The following is a syntax used with Auditpol. Table 7.3 describes some of the switches. Auditpol command, sub command options. Here's an example. Auditpol /get/user:\w patnick /category detailed tracking /r. So we'll just go through some of these. Command description. \backup allows an administrator to save the audit policy to a file. /clear allows an administrator to clear an audit policy. /get gives administrators the ability to view the current audit policy. /list allows you to view selectable policy elements. /remove removes all per user audit policy settings and disables all system audit policy settings. /restore allows an administrator to restore an audit policy from a file that was previously created using Auditpol /backup. /set gives an administrator the ability to set an audit policy. /question mark displays help features of Windows Server 2012 R2 auditing. Microsoft continues to increase the level of detail into security audit logs. Microsoft has also implemented the deployment and management of audit policies. The following list includes some of the features. Global object access auditing global object access. Auditing administrators using Windows Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8 now have the ability to define computer-wide system access control lists, SACLS. Administrators can define SACLS for either file system or the registry. After the specified SACL is defined, the SACL is then applied automatically to every object of that type. This can be helpful to administrators for verifying that all critical files, folders, and registry settings on a computer are protected. This is also helpful for identifying when an issue occurs with a system restore reason for access. Reporting when an administrator is performing auditing in Windows Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8. They can now see the reason why an operation was successful or unsuccessful. Previously, they lacked the ability to see the reason why an operation success or failed. Advanced audit policy settings in Windows Server 2012 R2. There are many new advanced audit policy settings that can be used in place of the 9 basic auditing settings. These advanced audit settings also help eliminate the unnecessary auditing activities that can make audit logs difficult to manage and decipher. Expression-based audit policies. Administrators have the ability, because of dynamic access control, to create targeted audit policies by using expressions based on user, computer, and resource claims. For example, an administrator has the ability to create an audit policy that tracks all read and write operations for files that are considered high business impact. Expression-based audit policies can be directly created on a file or folder or created through the use of a group policy. Removable storage device auditing. Administrators have the ability to monitor attempts to use removable storage device on your network. If an administrator decides to implement this policy, an audit event is created every time one of your users attempts to copy, move, or save a network resource onto a removable storage device. Configuring Windows Firewall options. Another security aspect to look into is Windows Firewall. Before I start talking about firewall options, you must first understand what a firewall does. A firewall is a software or hardware device that checks the information that is received from outside or external network and uses the information to determine whether the packet should be accepted or declined. Depending on the firewall, you have the ability to check all potential remote users against Active Directory to verify that the remote user has an authorized domain account. This process is called Active Directory Account Integration. Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 has a built-in firewall. The following options are some of the configuration options included in Windows Firewall settings dialog box. Domain Profile tab. On the Domain Profile tab, you have the ability to turn the firewall on or off by using the Firewall State drop-down menu. When setting the Firewall State option in this tab, it's for turning the firewall on or off for the domain only. When turning the firewall on, you also have the ability to block inbound and outbound connections. Administrators also have the ability to control the Windows Firewall behavior along with setting up logging. Private Profile tab. On the Private Profile tab, you have the ability to turn the firewall on or off by using the Firewall State drop-down menu. When setting the firewall state in this tab, it's for turning the firewall on or off for the private profile only. When turning the firewall on, you also have the ability to block inbound and outbound connections. Administrators also have the ability to control the Windows Firewall private profile behavior along with setting up logging. Public Profile. On the Public Profile tab, you have the ability to turn the firewall on or off by using the Firewall State drop-down menu. Sorry, I think I might have, oh, that's okay. When setting the firewall tab in this tab, it's for turning the firewall on or off for the public profile only. When turning the firewall on, you also have the ability to block inbound and outbound connections. Administrators also have the ability to control the Windows Firewall public profile behavior along with setting up logging. Figure 7.10, public profile tab of Windows Firewall. IPsec Settings tab. The IPsec Setting tab allows you to set up the IPsec Defaults, IPsec Exemptions, and IPsec Tunnel Authorization. The IPsec Defaults button allows you to specify settings used by IPsec to establish secured connections. The IPsec Exemptions allows you to set up ICMP exemptions from IPsec. Finally, you can set up IPsec Tunnel Authorization, which allows you to specify the users and computers that are authorized to establish an IPsec tunnel. Windows Server 2012 R2 takes firewalls a step further than just the normal firewall settings in Control Panel. An MMC snap-in called Windows Firewall with Advanced Security can block all incoming and outgoing connections based on its configuration. One of the major advantages to using the Windows Firewall with Advanced Security snap-in is the ability to set firewall configuration on remote computers using group policies. Another advantage to using this MMC is the ability to set up firewalls using IPsec security. Windows Firewall with Advanced Security snap-in allows administrator to set more in-depth rules for Microsoft Active Directory users and groups, source and destination Internet Protocol IP address, IP port numbers, ICMP settings, IP settings, specific types of interfaces and services. Figure 7.11 IPsec Settings tab of Windows Firewall settings. Figure 7.12 Windows Firewall with Advanced Security snap-in. You can configure more advanced settings by configuring Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. To access Windows Firewall with Advanced Security, press the Windows key, choose Control Panel, large icons, view Windows Firewall, and click the Advanced Settings link. The scope pane to the left shows that you can set up specific inbound and outbound rules, connection security rules, and monitoring rules. The central area shows an overview of the firewall's status as well as the current profile settings. Let's take a look at these in more detail. Inbound and outbound rules. Inbound and outbound rules consist of many pre-configured rules that can be enabled or disabled. Obviously, inbound rules monitor inbound traffic and outbound rules monitor outbound traffic. By default, many are disabled. Double-clicking a rule will bring up its properties dialog box as shown in figure 7.14. You can filter the rules to make them easier to view. Filtering can be performed based on the profile, the rule effects, or whether the rule is enabled or disabled, or based on the rule group. If you can't find a rule that is appropriate to your needs, you can create a new rule by right-clicking inbound rules or outbound rules in the scope pane and then selecting new rule. The new inbound or outbound rule wizard will launch, and you will be asked whether you want to create a rule based on a particular program, protocol, or port, or predefined category or custom settings. Figure 7.14, an inbound rules properties dialog box for WSUS, and WSUS stands for Windows Server Update Services. And here we have figure 7.13, inbound rules. When setting up rules, you can set up firewall exemptions. These exemptions allow you to work around a particular rule that you may be setting up. Firewall exceptions can be handy when when an authenticated user or service needs to get around a firewall setting. These exceptions can be also set under the advanced firewall settings under the connection security rules link. Exercise 7.3 will walk you through the steps needed to create a new inbound rule that will allow only encrypted TCP traffic. In this exercise, you will have the ability to create a custom rule and then specify which authorized users and computers can connect using the rule. Exercise 7.3, configuring Windows Firewall. Press the Windows key and select Control Panel, large icons. View Windows Firewall. 2. Click Advanced Settings on the left side. 3. Right-click Inbound Rules and select New Rule. 4. Choose a rule type. For this exercise, choose Custom so that you can see all of the options available to you, then click Next. 5. Choose the programs or services that are affected by this rule. For this exercise, choose all programs, then click Next. 6. Choose the protocol type as well as the local and remote port numbers that are affected by this rule. For this exercise, choose TCP and make sure all ports is selected for both local port and remote port. Click Next to continue. 7. Choose the local and remote IP addresses that are affected by this rule. Choose any IP address for both local and remote, then click Next. 8. Specify whether this rule will allow the connection. Allow the connection only if it is secure or block the connection. Select the option allow the connection if it is secure, then click Next. 9. Specify whether connections should be allowed only from certain users. You can experiment with these options if you want, then click Next to continue. 10. Specify whether connections should be allowed only from certain computers. Again, you can experiment with these options if you want, then click Next to continue. 11. Choose these profiles that will be affected by this rule. Select one or more profiles, then click Next to continue. 12. Give your profile a name and description, then click Finish. Your custom rule will appear in the list of inbound rules and the rule will be enabled. 13. Double-click your newly created rule. Notice that you can change the options you previously configured. 14. Disable the rule by right-clicking the rule and choosing Disable Rule. 15. Close Windows Firewall. Configuring Windows Firewall with a GPO, and GPO stands for Group Policy Objects. If you wanted to configure Windows Firewall on all your client machines, you have two options. You can either configure each machine manually or set up a GPO to configure the Windows Firewall. To set up the Windows Firewall using a GPO, configure the computer section, Windows Settings, Security, Windows Firewall with Advanced Security. One of the advantages of using a GPO when configuring the Windows Firewall is that you can configure multiple profiles and multiple firewall settings using the group policy. Another even bigger advantage is being able to configure thousands of computers by setting just one GPO. It saves an IT administrator from going around the company from machine to machine to set up the firewall. Import-export policies. One advantage of configuring Windows Firewall is the ability to export and import policy settings. For example, I set up a policy for 35 machines. I created the policy one of the 35 machines and then exported the policy. I then imported the policy to the other 34 machines, so I did not have to recreate the policy over and over again. To export a policy, right-click Windows Firewall with Advanced Security and choose Export Policy. Choose Import Policy on the other machines to import the policy. IPsec policy settings in Windows Firewall. When configuring options for a Windows Firewall with advanced security, you have the ability to configure some IPsec policies. The three options are as follows. IPsec Defaults specify settings used by IPsec to establish security connections. IPsec Exemptions, exempting ICMP from all IPsec requirements, can simplify troubleshooting of network connectivity issues. IPsec Tunnel Authorization specifies the computers or users authorized to establish IPsec tunnel connections to this computer. Monitoring. The monitoring section shows detailed information about the firewall configurations for the domain profile, private profile, and public profile settings. These network location profiles determine which settings are enforced for private networks, public networks, and networks connected to a domain. So in this chapter, you examined server security and saw why it's one of the most important aspects of Windows Server 2012 R2. As a system administrator, Windows security is something that every administrator should be using, but many don't know how it works properly. I explained how to set up groups and group security, as well as how to set up permissions for those groups. I also covered auditing. I showed you how to set up and monitor auditing to see who has successfully or unsuccessfully accessed resources, machines, Active Directory, and all aspects of network security. I finished the chapter by looking into Windows Firewall. I showed you how to configure the firewall and add exclusions and rules. I also showed you how to view and monitor the firewall results. So I'm going to leave it here today for this video. If you like listening, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. Thank you.